The UK and 4 other Western governments have imposed sanctions on 2 far-right Israeli ministers. The sanctions will include asset freezes and travel restrictions against National Security Minister Itamar Ben-Gvir and Finance Minister Bezalel Smotrich. The UK says the move is in response to repeated incitements of violence against Palestinian communities in the occupied West Bank. Australia, Canada, New Zealand and Norway are also imposing sanctions. They say Israel needs to take immediate action against what they call extremist settlers.
Ben-Gvir and Smotrich have been inciting violence against Palestinian people for months and months and months. They have been encouraging egregious abuses of human rights. We have been raising this with the Israeli government, both privately and publicly. We have been absolutely clear. This has to stop, and we stand for a two-state solution. And the settler violence that we've seen in the West Bank particularly is entirely unacceptable.
Nour Odeh is standing by with the latest Israeli reaction. But first, let's go to Milena Veselinovic. She's live for us in London. So the UK sanctioning 2 Israeli ministers over their conduct. Milena, tell us what that means. How significant is it?
Well, it is pretty significant. In practical terms, what it means is that the UK will freeze assets of Ben-Gvir and Smotrich, and they also face a travel ban. They will not be allowed to travel to the UK, and any financial institution based in the UK will not be allowed to deal with them. Now, these sanctions are similar to those imposed on, for example, senior Russian officials and figures who have links to the war in Ukraine. Now, Bezalel Smotrich and Itamar Ben-Gvir are figures who are really central to Benjamin Netanyahu's fragile government, and to say that they are controversial really is an understatement. They have both made a number of hugely shocking comments on the war in Gaza over the past several months, and they are also known as the faces of far right in Israel. For example, Ben-Gvir was actually convicted of incitement to racism back in 2007. Smotrich also approved a number of new settlements in the occupied West Bank, and they are illegal under international law. But what's quite significant about this is that it is a pretty major break by the UK from the foreign policy of the United States, which has been so far a lot more benign towards these far-right figures in Israel. For example, the government of Joe Biden did sanction individual Israeli settlers, but it fell short of sanctioning actual government officials and cabinet ministers. So this could be pointing towards a rift, perhaps, in that allyship and relationship with these 2 quite big transatlantic allies.
And why are we seeing that shift in British policy now, Milena?
Well, David Lammy, the foreign minister, did say that the previous Conservative government also was considering sanctioning these 2 individuals. And I think the kind of comments that they made recently have really shaken most diplomats in the West to their core, with just the sheer brutality of them. For example, Finance Minister Smotrich recently saying that he would not allow not even a grain of wheat in Gaza, that Gaza will be entirely destroyed and Palestinian people will leave in great numbers to third countries. So I think after those kinds of remarks, I feel that many here in London felt the need to respond to that in some shape and form. Whether that means the UK is taking a different or changing its course when it comes to that policy towards the Palestinian state, for example, I think it's too early to say. Keir Starmer, the UK Prime Minister, has always said that he believed in a 2-state solution, but as part of a wider diplomatic negotiated process, and we're clearly not there yet. So it is too early to say whether this makes a permanent shift in UK's stance towards Israel.
That is Milena Veselinovic with the latest live in London. Thank you very much, Milena. Let's cross to Nour Odeh in the Jordanian capital, Amman. She's there because the Israeli government has banned Al Jazeera from reporting inside Israel and the occupied West Bank. Nour, have we had any response from Israel so far to this?
Quite a lot of responses, Elizabeth. Let's start with the men who are the subject of these sanctions, Bezalel Smotrich and Itamar Ben-Gvir, both sounding very defiant, rejecting these sanctions as ludicrous and outrageous. The Interior Minister of Israel said that there should be an urgent meeting of the cabinet to discuss the repercussions of those sanctions. Bezalel Smotrich, who is a key ally in this coalition government, was inaugurating a new illegal settlement in the occupied West Bank when he commented on the sanctions, and he said that he wouldn't stop his actions to thwart the possibility of Palestinian statehood. Let's remember, these are not rogue ministers. These are not insignificant figures in Israeli politics. These are two of the main allies of Benjamin Netanyahu, without whom the government would fall apart. And so we expect to hear a lot of reactions in defense of those two ministers. The policies they adopt, the incitement to violence, the policies against Gaza, all really a point of consensus in Israeli mainstream politics at the moment. Of course, Ben-Gvir and Smotrich are both settlers living illegally in the occupied West Bank, providing political cover and protection to settlers who have increased their attacks against Palestinian communities to reach unprecedented levels, really, that caused several communities just in the past few months to leave their areas, their homeland, to try and seek cover and protection from those increasing attacks.
And Nour, we mentioned a number of other countries are also imposing sanctions. Have you heard anything about those?
Yeah, there was a joint statement issued by the foreign ministers of all those countries, Canada, Australia, New Zealand, and Norway. Norway, of course, is a country that has recognized Palestine, taken a step further from the other partners in recognizing Palestine and wanting to seek accountability. They sought the input of the International Court of Justice on the issue of banning humanitarian aid to Gaza, all of them saying that these sanctions are meant to curb what they viewed as appalling policies and behavior, but that they don't indicate a significant shift or change in policy and commitment to Israel's security, to the relationship, a good relationship that they want to maintain with Israel. But all these countries have basically singled out these two ministers, which one can consider convenient targets, if you will, of the sanctions, in order to signal how uneasy and uncomfortable it is for these capitals to continue watching these policies unfold, watching the consequences of those policies also in the occupied West Bank and Gaza without taking action. Of course, we've been telling and reporting to our viewers all of the protests that are happening across Europe and across the world, that public pressure coming to bear and perhaps explaining those steps of late.
Nour, thank you very much for that. That is Nour Odeh joining us live from Amman.
Make sure to subscribe to our channel to get the latest news from Al Jazeera.